embracing that growth mindset that I think is really hard. Like in theory, and we read about it and we say, yeah, the growth mindset's incredible. But if you're really embracing it, it means that whatever I'm doing today, I could probably do even more effective tomorrow.
Greetings. We are here. We're ready for another episode. Mandy, hello. How are we doing?
Amani, you look like you're in a jail cell. Where are you?
I'm
Where
not
are
in
you right
a jail.
now?
Hold on. I'm not in a jail cell.
You didn't get it. You didn't pick up to the clink. You didn't get to the clink in the last 24 hours.
No, I'm not in the clink.
Good. Thank
I'm in
goodness.
Phoenix, Arizona for the National Speakers Association Annual Influence Conference. And this is day 4. This is day 4 of the conference.
Ooh, you're in the home stretch. I keep seeing so many people posting. I keep seeing our friend Aaron King. I
Yeah.
see you. I see like all these different people are posting about NSA. It looks like it's been a really good show so far. What's been a highlight for you?
I would say the highlight was probably actually most recently. There's 2 highlights. We just had a panel discussion when there were bureaus and speaker agents on stage talking about how to best work with them, which is always interesting.
Yeah.
That was interesting. And then I would say I had a booked event while I was here in downtown Phoenix yesterday, which was cool and had some good attendance, and it was good. That's probably the second highlight there.
Ooh. So who booked that one for you? Was that done through book launches or did you just suss it out? How did that go down?
Yeah, that was done by the booking agency of Amani right there.
Yes, Amani,
Yeah, so
booking
that
agent extraordinaire.
that was me. Worked with a bookstore, independent bookstore, black owned. It was good. It was really good. So every city that I try to get to, if I can make it happen. So this was another good one. Also at the conference, a friend of the program, Julie Broad, is with us here. So she's here.
Oh, fun.
She presented yesterday. There's probably a bunch of people that are here for sure.
Yeah, I keep seeing all the posts. Julie, poor Julie and I have had back and forth phone calls. Like she canceled, I canceled, she can't. We will talk someday. We will
Yeah,
talk someday
yeah,
at some point.
yeah. That's good. What is new with you?
Oh, Monty, this renovation's gonna break me. I'm doing- I'm gonna talk about the positive. Is my family, my some of my favorite cousins are in town from Ohio,
Okay.
and they came in town for their 10-year wedding anniversary, and they did a vow renewal last week on Thursday night over on the cliffs on Sunset Cliffs over the sunset, and they had me be their officiant. And
Ooh.
so it's just such an honor with people that you love and that you know their relationship so well. And I got to officiate their ceremony, and then we all went to dinner, and then they've been in town all weekend. So it's just been, I went on a great bike ride with Aunt Dina yesterday. And then, oh, the whole family, this is so fun. The whole family went to Gas Lamplighter on Friday night. Oh
Okay.
my gosh, it was so fun. So the Gas Lamplighter is a high end, it's like a club style karaoke bar. So imagine going to a karaoke bar, but having like really good cocktails, like the kind you don't have to send back, like really good cocktails with like foamy foamersons on the top for an espresso martini. So good. And then they have a stage and like beautiful lighting in the background. So everybody looks good on stage. And almost everybody in our group got up and sang, which was awesome. And then we ended up in the club next door, which you know me, I go to bed at 8:30. So just even being out past 8 was a thing. And it was hilarious because nobody in our group would normally like go to a club, but we went to Sidebar next door. It was so fun. One of the guys came up and asked my Aunt Dina, who was 61 years old, invited her to the DJ booth and gave her the smoke gun, and she was like shooting out smoke at people. I mean, it was unexpected fun for all ages, and we had it was such a blast. Yeah, so it was. I guess like if you think you're too old for the club, you're not. Also, if you think you're not fun, you probably are. And karaoke is good for the soul. Like it was people that wouldn't normally sing. Like one of my cousins, it was her first time she ever got up there and she sang, and it was spectacular. So it was really really fun. We had a really fun night. So I'm glad we did that.
All
Oh
right.
my! Can you hear my Scoots yelling in
Yeah.
the background? My husband's saying, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So that sounds amazing. Okay.
yeah, it was fun.
Our guest today. Let's see how. Okay. So this is how I'm gonna tell a story. So let's bring her to the screen too. We're gonna bring her to the screen.
Okay.
So we have our guest today. So this is Lyndal is joining us. I first met her. I think it was my first week. I moved to LA in 2007. And one of
Aw.
our close friends, Misty Shellner, she invited us all out. We went out to like this party in like Beverly Hills. I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to Beverly Hills party." I was so excited. We went to this party. It was like 5 of us together, and we met. It was a cool party. It was interesting. That was my introduction to living in LA. It was like
Ooh.
18 years ago. It's crazy. Almost to the date. Well, 18 years ago in April. And we've been fast friends, close friends ever since. We've been through a lot of ups and downs in life, like a lot of them in like 18
Aw.
years, and changing jobs, changing careers, doing all sorts of things. And but she's amazing. She knows about leadership. She's gonna give us good advice. So with that, I don't have my applause, but we'll say welcome to the show, Lyndal Larkin. So yes, round of applause there. You're
Linda, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for
You too.
being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and congrats on your 3-year anniversary of the
oh,
podcast. It's
Thank
incredible.
you.
That is no easy feat. It's really
yes,
No
awesome.
yes.
easy feat, but we're having fun.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. What I think would be pretty cool, because for people, I know you, so I'm curious to see how you answer this question. But this is a question I kind of started asking recently. But if you were going to describe who Lyndal is in like 30 seconds or less, like tell us who you are, and you can only mention what you do for work in like a small part of it. So who is Lyndal?
Well, and I'm an extrovert, so 30 seconds is really tough.
Listen, I'm the
Um,
same way. You can't put me on a timer, Linda.
I need more time. I I'm going to go back to one of these words in a second, but I leverage my wisdom to support growth-minded people, leaders, to align what they say, do, and reward.
Okay.
And there's a connection there to a bigger picture, because there are all sorts of statistics out there, but essentially we spend about 90,000 hours of our working or our time at work, or about a third of our adult life. And I feel really strongly, both personally and professionally, that I have a calling to help maximize that, to be really deliberate and intentional in supporting people in my life to be the best versions of themselves in that.
Okay. I like it. And then outside of what you do for professionally, who is Lyndal?
Aw,
Oh, okay. Well, I should be asking you that, maybe, Amani.
with the script.
I I'm an adventurer. I'm a traveler. I live in Southern California, so I adore every sunny day, and I appreciate it. I am not from here originally. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and so I sort of joke that I don't joke. I remember coming to LA in college and seeing the palm trees and thinking, people live like this, like palm trees every day, and I appreciate that. I am an avid I'm a connector, and I am an avid chef. Home chef, but it's about entertaining and bringing people together with food and good wine and company and meaningful conversation.
There
And
we
in
Mm.
go.
between that, there's some hiking and water stuff and kayaking and travel. But that's
Okay.
that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
All right.
What's your
So
legacy dish? Like
there
if
you
if you're to go somewhere, they're like, we gotta have Lyndall's, whatever it is. What's something you always bring?
Oh, you know what? I This year, that's funny you asked that, because this year I have been challenging myself to make new recipes. I am a planner. You were talking to someone on one of your podcasts about improv, and I did an improv class years ago, and I would drive to the class trying to plan who I was going to be. Okay, whatever happens, I'm going to be a lady with black hair and I'm going to be in an elevator, and you can't do it, right? And it was the
Right.
greatest test and challenge for me. But also with cooking, like I have been that person that goes, "Oh yeah, I cook." And I do I do a lot of different kind of ethnicities. So I love Indian cooking. So I would say Indian is probably my specialty. But
Ooh.
I love spices and I make it really spicy. So it's a little bit tricky to find people that want to eat it that spicy. But I also this year I've been on a mission to host people and make things I've never made before, which sounds sort of trite, but it was a really big deal for me because generally I want to practice it. I want it to be perfect before I put it out there. And what I wanted to kind of practice what I preach to my clients, to my friends. And so I'm still going to say Indian, but I'm playing around with a lot of different dishes right now.
I
So
love you. You ended up being an improvisational person accidentally
maybe,
in your
maybe,
own way. Well,
yeah.
you mentioned your clients, and you've been in the coaching game for a long time, and it's funny because I started my
Mm,
coaching business 18 years ago before coach was a word, right? Like now everybody's a coach. I'm actually looking for a new word. Like you and I could probably come up with a new coaching
we
word,
could,
but you've been doing this before coaching was actually
yeah,
coaching,
yeah.
and you've seen growth and you've seen growing pains and you've seen all of it. So I'm curious, how has coaching changed over the years? Like what have been some of the markers maybe in the last couple years that you've seen change in your
Mm.
clients who are being coached in terms of their growth?
It's so funny you said 18 years. I did my first coach training in 2002.
Mm.
And
Oh,
I had initially thought I would launch my practice then. And I am so glad I didn't because there was so much that I did not know about
yeah.
just the world and experience and having executive experience. And the reason I didn't launch is I was terrified of business development and the idea of getting clients. And at that time, one of the classes that I did, someone came and talked to us, and they said, you have to look at everybody as a potential client. Your aunt, your best friend. You're giving cards out to everyone. And I went, oh, I don't know how to be authentic and do that. And so I shifted and I went back in house. I was working in learning and development and had come from a hotel, went back into the hotel. I'm so glad I did. Because there was so much more I needed to experience from a leadership and a
Mm,
life perspective. And so I really started coaching and I was using those skills internally and honing those. And then I would sort of organically get clients from that. And it was the perfect timing. But I think there's a couple of things. I think there is much more, and I think actually the pandemic accelerated this a bit as well. There's much more of an emphasis on leadership and a willingness to talk about it as a priority of talent. And when I say talent, I mean the human component, right? And saying this is really critical to our organization. And there's more of a focus on self-development than ever. I think coaching, and still we butt up against that a little bit as coaches, where there's this belief that it's remedial or something is wrong. And so oftentimes, I'll try to come up with examples of elite athletes. For example, LeBron James works with multiple coaches, top of his game, and wanting to continue the growth, the development, and that trusted resource that's going to give the feedback, that's going to say, okay, let's tweak this. And it's embracing that growth mindset that I think is really hard. I think in theory, and we read about it and we say, yeah, the growth mindset's incredible. But if you're really embracing it, it means that whatever I'm doing today, I could probably do even more effective tomorrow. And so
mhm,
I think we want to be perfectionists as humans a lot of times, right? And I want this to be perfect. And if I say that, I am then sort of resisting that growth mindset, if that makes sense. And
mhm,
so I think there is more of an awareness around that than ever. I think it used to be, wow, what did I do wrong to get assigned a coach, right? I must be about to get, and
mhm,
there are some exceptional coaches that work with remedial clients. I don't. I am seeking the high performer that wants to continue to get even better. And those I think they've always been there, but there's more of an appetite and a comfort to be able to speak to that. There's more of a willingness for leaders, and I think maybe humans in general, to be more vulnerable and acknowledge what they don't know and that they want to learn, and to think of it much more holistically than just I've got to prove myself and I've got to be really exceptional all the time, and I need to figure out how to do it myself. And so I think there's more of an openness to just the conditions that create a really exceptional coaching relationship.
It's funny. I agree with that because I do think nowadays you're talking to people. I think even 4 or 5 years ago, people never said, oh, I have a therapist, I have a coach, I have a dietitian, I have a trainer. People just kept that to themselves. And now it's almost like a badge of like, I'm working on myself. I've got that, which is great. I love it. I love self improvement, but it's funny you say that because I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. People are, they're wearing it a little more like a badge right now. That's
Mhm,
interesting.
mhm,
What's
mhm.
stunting people's growth right now in the
Mhm.
executive
Oh.
space?
Good question.
Mhm. Um, Probably the lack of a growth mindset
Mm.
overall, right? The growth mindset says, there's the fixed and the growth mindset, and the fixed says, I am who I am, right? And
Mhm.
I always use a really simple example of running. I'm not a runner. I don't anticipate to ever be a runner, um, unless being chased, right?
I was
We
gonna
would
say
have
I had a girlfriend that said I'll only run if the devil's chasing me.
I'm going to take that. I'm going to borrow that
Steal
one.
it, steal it.
But I think the growth mindset says, that anything is possible, right? I could learn to run marathons. I probably need to hire a coach and help me get there. But if I'm not embracing that belief about others as well as myself, then it's very hard to believe that there's anywhere to go than exactly where I am. So I think there's that piece of it. I think there's similar to what you said about this kind of badge of honor and people talking more openly about therapists and trainers and all of the resources that they're using to be better at all of the different aspects of their life. I think there's more of a prioritization of that, but I think there's still a little bit. I see this dynamic sometimes of the I have to do it myself. I have to bootstrap it,
Mm.
right? And I've got all of these resources. There's books and there's now there's podcasts and those are all incredible resources, right? I just had a conversation with someone about AI and coaching, and I said AI is amazing. I utilize AI for many things. It's not the enemy, I don't believe, and I don't think it ever will be of coaching. And interestingly enough, as kind of testing it out, I put a prompt into AI and I said, tell me about the, what is the difference between using AI for leadership development or hiring an executive coach? And AI came back with one sentence. It said, AI delivers knowledge, not transformation.
Ooh,
Mm.
Like, whoa, oh, I might have to borrow that one too.
Yes, yes,
that's a LinkedIn
Yeah,
post if I ever heard
yeah,
one. That's
right.
good.
And
yes.
Yeah.
so, I think there's this piece of feeling there's a little bit of an investment in self. And, most of my clients, they're part of the corporate environment they're in, whether they're in startups or they're in large multinational corporations. There's a development fund, but I think there's also this piece of still reconciling for some that like, am I worth it? Is this the right time for me, or maybe as soon as, right? It's very easy to say, well, as soon as this, as soon as that. And I think in general, focusing on talent and on people, it's easy for organizations to wait until things are bad, right? It's hiring a personal trainer. Well, I'll wait until I'm really pressure prompted that I've got this situation, an event that I need to look this way, and now I'm going to hire a personal trainer and really try it. And we're a little bit pressure prompted as humans. So I think it's also those that are more reactive than being proactive about development for themselves and for others. That
Yeah.
was a really long answer.
That's
That's a good
great. A
answer,
lot of
though.
good nuggets in there. That's good.
Yes. What did you do to get over your kind of fear or trepidation about business development?
Oh, well, and you and I have talked about this over our 18 years. Great question. And yeah, I think for me, I think all kind of solopreneurs that are selling their own kind of services have to recognize the value that service brings you. It's almost like taking the ego out of it and taking it away from saying, I'm selling Lyndal, right? That feels really daunting, and it feels like now I have to try to convince you that I'm so amazing. I'm not. I'm selling you the. I'm not even selling that. I am sharing the power of coaching, the power of leadership development from a group and a team effectiveness standpoint. There's the results aspect of that. So I feel very strongly about the benefits and the service that can provide. And I think for me, it was taking the ego away and and separating that to say, let's talk about this. And I might be the right coach for you, I might not, right? I always suggest that if it's someone that I'm going to work with one-on-one, and I do some group coaching, I do executive development days where we'll do like a strategic intensive for a day together. But most of my one-on-one coaching relationships span anywhere from 6 months to years. I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary with 2 different clients. And
Aw.
that relationship is so powerful and so special and unique, but it has to be the right chemistry. It has to be the right person. So I always recommend that someone should go out and have conversations with multiple coaches to see where there's that connection, there's the chemistry. So I think part of that also, and I'm just thinking out loud here, I think, Amani, it's the abundance mindset, right? It's stepping away from that. There's only so many. And I think there's this fear sometimes when you're, wait, Mandy's a coach too. Now Amani's coaching. What does that mean for me? It means more people are educated and exposed to coaching. How unbelievably cool is that? And the person that's going to be drawn to your services and your work and the specialty that you have, that's great. And that's probably not the person that's going to be working with me. And guess what? There's more than enough to go around. So I think it's also stepping back from that scarcity mindset that a lot of business development kind of drives into us of going, you've got to get out there and you've got to get it. And it's taken some time. And I know, Amani, you and I have talked about this, to kind of unprogram or deprogram that and find my own kind of way of doing that and being and trusting in that process.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
the tent is big enough for everybody.
it is. You'll be pleased to know that over the last week, I have kind of created this other additional coaching program to add on to my music business coaching. And so maybe we can talk about it a little later because Mandy, I have to actually send you the details because it's very interesting. Um,
Awesome. I want to see it.
Next question is, like, out of all the people that you've had the most success with in terms of coaching and breakthroughs, what has been the common characteristics of these people in addition to having the abundance mindset?
Ooh. So there's been the growth mindset. There's also been a humility and a willingness to take the constructive feedback. I often get input from my clients that someone said the other day. They said, "You've got this tough love approach,
Mm.
right? That there's I am going to be your biggest champion, but it's going to be with truth and with sometimes tough truths. And typically, when I'm working one-on-one with a client, I will interview a number of their stakeholders, and we do this 360 in essence, and really provide some candid feedback about not just what's going really well, but where there are some opportunities to continue to grow, to continue to improve. And so I think there has to be this openness to that. The other piece that I would say is absolutely critical is self-awareness.
Mm.
Right? And if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not willing to pause and reflect, and I would say there's, for the reflection piece, there also has to be the time and space to do that. Right? I just spoke with someone who is really interested in engaging in coaching, and he just started a new job, and he is up to his eyeballs in just trying to figure out which way is COO, which way is up, and their business is having some really interesting challenges, but it's a lot. And we talked about it, and I said, I don't think this is the right time to coach right now, because what happens was we will have a call, but the learning and the practice, the learning lab of that, where you go out and you get to practice some of the things that we're talking about and come back and assess and analyze, that is in that time and space. And there has to be some reflection space. There has to be the self-awareness, but also the time and space to do that. So timing is also a piece for that.
Okay. All right. Mandy, you go next because I want to maybe do some quick live coaching in a minute.
Oh, exciting. That's fun,
Cool.
Amani. I want to talk about sales and leadership. That's my wheelhouse. That's where I cut my teeth and have hung for years. And I think, you know, great salespeople aren't always great leaders, and great leaders aren't always great salespeople. And so I interact a lot with salespeople as a buyer, but I also interact with them as a coach. And sometimes that's a message that is difficult to get across, because I think leaders sometimes think the best performing salesperson is going to eventually be the boss, which isn't always the case, right? So I just wanted to ask you about your experience with leadership in sales, and that leadership track for the average salesperson.
I think that's a really broad topic. I think there's a couple of things. I think one is in any industry, in any field or practice area, um, it's so common to take someone who's really good at the technical aspect of their job and promote them, right? Think, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, you're our best salesperson. Now we're going to make you director. And guess what? You have a team of salespeople, and oh, you're not actually doing very well at holding them accountable or developing them or coaching them in the way that they need to grow their business. And those individuals are often so used to being individual contributors that I know I can just work harder, I can work longer, and I will deliver, right? That I can single-handedly make this happen, and they end up burning out really quickly at those senior levels if they're not getting clear with direct reports what that looks like.
Yeah.
How do they then learn to, and it's not just delegating, it's delegating, but it's so much more than that, of how to execute with the team below them, so or reporting into them. There's also that executive presence and managing across the peer group, oftentimes, which is a very different skill set, and
Yeah.
managing up to their boss. So I think I think the interesting part for me is sales is one of those things that is so, it's so tangible and it's so easy to measure success. And so I see sales often being the position in organizations where we might have someone who is not a great leader, who's maybe even not modeling very good behavior, not aligned with the organizational values, but by golly, they're delivering on their sales numbers. So we can't possibly exit them, right? Or coach them on that,
Ugh,
because they're
yes.
dead there, but she's our best salesperson, right? And that you're having a reaction to that. I want to
Yeah. Yeah,
pause
like,
there because
what
I'm
do you
super curious.
do? Well, 'cause, you brought something up that is a mini epidemic, and it's not just in hospitality, it's every
I know.
industry, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're forgiving bad behavior because of top performance, which is just a bad way to grow an organization, a culture. So, how do you have those conversations with leaders of companies when you see that coming in? What are you talking to them about? Because it's we used to forgive these types of things even though we knew they were wrong, and now we're not forgiving them, and we should never have. We're catching them, I think, sooner, but it's still there. So how do you deal with that as an executive?
Leadership has to start at the top, right? And that's not just a catchy quote, but if you don't have the the engagement of the senior leadership team, including the founder, the CEO, the president, whatever that structure looks like, and the executive team coming down from that, that are truly bought into the values, right? So if an organization doesn't have values, then we go back to that place of saying, okay, what defines us, right? Who are we as an organization? Assuming there are those values, and most do. The gap tends to be the word in action, right? Oh, we've got these, words on the wall, the wow, right? But we're not delivering on those, or a few people are being held accountable to those, but not everybody, which is, it creates a negative environment on so many levels, and we could talk for hours about that. So I think there's a piece of acknowledging that, right, and saying, okay, are we willing to do the hard work of aligning our actions to our values, right? And what does that mean? Because when the values are really part of the culture in the organization, they are infused into everything: the way that we hire, the way that we performance manage, the way that we look at performance reviews, the way we develop, the way we promote, and the way we fire. And we
Mm,
have to be willing to do that. And I think it's very easy as a coach or a consultant to come into an organization and say, well, okay, you're not there yet, but let's get you there. And for me, it's about having that really tough conversation up front to say, are you willing to do that? Right? If this, then that. And if you're not, that's okay. You need to understand the impact of that, right? There is an impact. It's not, there's this belief sometimes that I think humans and I think organizations tend to believe that there's sort of this neutral zone, right? That, like, well, I'm just here. We haven't done anything yet, so we're sort of floating in this ambiguous neutral zone. And the truth is, everything that you are doing, every choice you're making to do or not do, to say or not say, is moving you closer or further away from being aligned with your values, to ultimately your business objectives, to the talent that you are attracting, and recognizing that it is very obvious to external talent within the organization, sometimes even outside, when there is a or an imbalance of the way that those values are being, and that the leaders are being held accountable to them based on position, or, well, Mandi's our biggest sales performer, so we give her a little bit of grace. Sometimes she yells and screams, but oh, she's just so amazing, right? I mean, did you see the numbers she brought in? And I still see that happening too often, but it's about having that really candid conversation at the top. Because if you're
Yeah.
not willing to hire and fire for these things, and part of that is having the conversation saying, what behavior will we not tolerate?
Mhm.
Let's get
Yeah.
abundantly clear on that, because it's very easy to say, well, it's not okay. Okay, well, maybe in this case it's okay, right? Oh, it was just one time, and you know what, she's super stressed and this happened and that happened. We can always excuse it. So let's get crystal clear on what that is that you are not willing to tolerate, and what is that going to look like when it happens, because it will at some point, maybe not to the extreme that you're mapping it out, but it will. So now let's talk about that and get really clear, and alignment and agreement, right? So there's this team, and a lot of what I do with, I do strategic offsites, and I describe them, they're not team building, they're the catalyst for team effectiveness. So it's not a one day, it starts with the one day, that's the catalyst, and then it's putting these systems in place. A lot of what I'm talking about there is, okay, so how is an executive team, as a senior team, how are we collaborating? How are we going to make these decisions? How are we going to deal with the talent disruption, right, of a bad performer? And are we all aligned on this? And are we going to hold each other accountable to it? And there's a lot of pieces kind of underneath that. So I'm hitting kind of the top level there of what we're looking for, but it's critical that the senior team buys in, or you will not make the impact.
Yeah, that senior team being on the same page is so important. And I'm bummed that you're still seeing this. I think we're all seeing this, but I think we need to all be talking about this more frequently, so we
Yeah.
can say it's not okay. Like, and what behaviors will we accept, or what will we not accept? I know there's plenty of executive teams that are not having those conversations with each other. So that's just good to continue to talk about. I appreciate that perspective. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Okay, let's try some live coaching with Mandi and Lyndal. I'm going to give you a situation.
Oh, plot twist.
And no. What it is that you both will be asking me questions, well, primarily
Oh.
Lyndal and coaching, but I'm sure Mandi will have some questions too, because she
Okay.
knows me very well. So here's the situation. I've started the coaching program where I have my primarily musicians, people who are full-time creatives that monetize music. In the last 4 to 5 days, I might have gotten 4 to 5 DMs from people who are like, Amani, I'd love to set up some time with you to talk about your book, how you wrote it, how you did the launch. I had coffee with someone last week, same conversation. So I'm like, I need to follow the breadcrumbs and add this to my coaching offerings, particularly focused on my people who wanted advice about writing a book. Like, I can expose you to resources, get you your timeline, talk to you about how I make these appointments and these book launch events in different cities. Like, so many questions people have. It's so many questions. As my coach, how would you advise me to move forward with this? And then we can kind of talk about a little bit about pricing if we get there. So I'll ask you that first, Lyndal, just to kind of show us your mind and how it works. Because I think that when people see that, they're like, oh my gosh, Lyndal's amazing.
Well, and I will
Aw.
say, thank you very much. I will say there's that little disclaimer too, that the coaching relationship is so deeply personal that oftentimes it's very hard to coach. I know you well enough that I think I can coach you,
Yeah.
and we kind of coach each other sometimes. But I think as a whole, sometimes I'll get people that'll jump on the phone and they'll say like, okay, go, coach me. And it's sort of like doing that to a personal trainer, right? And saying, okay, you did 10 reps. Now your arm doesn't look any different. Did it work? It didn't work. I wanted it to work. There's a sustainable piece to this. I think you're onto something. And I think what jumped out to me first and foremost is how do you monetize this with authenticity, so
Yeah.
that you're not, I think it's very easy to get in the habit of having a whole bunch of coffee chats with people, and there's what I have seen different entrepreneurs do is they will batch out and say, great, Tuesday from 10 to 12, those are my pro bono hours that I'm willing to chat with mentees, if you will, informal or formal, right, that are looking for advice. Otherwise, here's the program. Here's what that looks like. Let me tell you a little bit about our process. And it doesn't mean that you don't schedule a call or you don't have a conversation with them. But there's a term. There's a business development group called Bold House, and they talk about the red velvet rope, right? That at the club, when you certainly in your music career, right? That you've got to identify who comes inside of that rope, right? That there's a little bit of a qualification that, awesome, I am absolutely up for helping people. Are you up for helping them at the expense of your business? So I feel like there's some work to then define, okay, I have no doubt that you could create the content and enhance the content, and maybe it's two different streams, maybe it's a combination of both. But I think there's something there of you getting really clear on what does that look like from a time perspective, because you're a busy guy. You're traveling, you're doing all of these different, you're so multi-passionate in all of the things that you're doing, that this could easily be something that distracts you. So I think there needs to be that initial clarity. So I would go through a few questions with you to say, okay, what are you doing here? What's that look like?
Have at it with the questions. Come on, ask the questions.
Okay, well, let's first and foremost, who's your client avatar?
My
Who's your
client
target?
avatar is I help creative 9-to-5ers, so 9-to-5 creatives monetize their art. And you can
Okay.
define art as music, books, whatever. Music, books are probably the two most common. Otherwise, actual art also.
Mhm,
That's kind of
mhm.
my perfect avatar, because if they're 9-to-5, they have money to pay for the services.
That was going to be my next question. I would say, and you don't have to share it here, but to get really clear as well, even more so, um, what demographic are they? Where are they at? Is this a 9-to-5er that's early 20s and trying to make the bills and pay rent? And I'm not trying to stereotype that that's all early 20s in any way, but how much disposable income do they have?
Yeah.
Is it someone who's looking at a second career, right? Who's at that point of midlife and saying, well, yeah, maybe I've got some savings. And I'll give you an example. There's a personal a sports trainer type person that does triathlon type work, and this person has targeted people that are his avatar is very specific, that people that are over 55 and that are semi-retired, that tend to be founders, CEOs of companies. So they've got freedom and flexibility with their schedule, they've got flexibility and income, and they are hitting this place where they want to make sure that they are staying fit and active. And there's this place of saying, okay, maybe I want to do a triathlon, maybe I want to do a marathon or a half marathon. And that's this person's very clear avatar. So I think, not that you have to share this here, but getting really even more clarity around who is that person, what do they look like, and then where do you find them? Where
Yeah.
are they? Like
Okay.
it could be a LinkedIn post, it could be reaching out to your network, but I think there's some really targeted efforts when you have more clarity on that would also allow you to determine where do you find that person and how do you make that compelling pitch. This is the time, right? That it's not, because with those 9-to-5ers, there's a hobby component to that of like, well, yeah, maybe I'll take. Now, I went to culinary school for a week. I did culinary boot camp at the Culinary Institute a few years ago, and it was a gift. It was a birthday gift to myself, and it was amazing. But it was something I'd looked at for years, and so finding that right time. How do you create that compelling time frame for it? That it's now. It's not. Well, yeah, it's really cool someday, right? I've always wanted to see this or do that, and that's on my list too. And it starts competing with these other experiences, travel, personal, professional. How do you create that compelling?
Okay, that's good. Okay, we'll pause. Mandi, anything to add before I continue?
I just think this is a business opportunity. 4 people in 1 week.
Yeah.
Why don't you just say, listen, I have a really awesome virtual
Mm.
session coming up on these exact two topics. It's 70 minutes. How about I put you on the wait list for it? And when I release the dates, I'll send it out. And it's first come, first serve. I limit the number of people because you don't want more than like 20 or 30 people in that session.
Mhm.
But if you've got 4 in 1 week, you could probably fill 20 or 30 people. And then from a time management perspective, you're getting everybody in one room. And then not only are you answering their questions or giving them some tips and tricks, other people, right? Everyone's learning from by osmosis. So I look at it as a pricing, packaging business opportunity for
Yeah.
you in
Yeah.
some way, if
Okay.
that's something that you want to do.
Okay, that's good. So we'll pause there. So just so the audience could just get an example of how Lyndal analyzes things and everything, which you exemplified greatly. So thank you.
It was
Now
beautiful, Lyndall. That was like magic.
it was,
Cool.
yes.
Thanks.
Now we're going to flip the script and let you ask both me and Mandi any question you like. So who do you want to ask the question to first? And what is said question?
I'm going to ask you both the same question, and I'll start with Mandi. So, oftentimes, and we talked a little bit about values in organizations, I'm curious about a time that you, and I'm trying to keep this deliberately broad, but a time that you felt that your values were in conflict or tension with a situation. What was the situation? What did you do? And what did you learn? What was the
Oh boy,
takeaway?
I love this question. I've had this happen a lot over my career. Um, the first, the first one that comes to mind is, I have to think about how I say this so I'm not exposing anybody. The first one, the first one that comes to mind, I was a young leader. So this is many years ago. And there was a particular way that the one of the executives of the company wanted to market our product and service. And it felt appalling to me, but everybody else was completely on board. And I sat in at least 3 meetings thinking, oh, surely they'll come to the realization that this is not okay. And with each meeting, it just got more and more elaborate. And at the fourth meeting, I then said, okay, this isn't quite how I would go about it, but that's okay because I'm in the minority here and we're going to go with the greater good. But I want us to consider what the numbers look like on this. And I want us to also consider the what if, what if, what if. And believe it or not, they hadn't thought of the what if, what if, what if. And they hadn't thought about the numbers. And the numbers, it was a lot, there was a big liability issue that would have turned into a numbers issue. And I
Hmm.
don't know why I hadn't thought about it sooner, but that was the way I brought that to the table, not to squash it, but just to refine it a little bit so it wasn't so dirty. I felt it was a little dirty. And it ended up working out okay in the end. But I just remember being like, I wouldn't have been so upset now because I would have probably spoken up sooner. But I felt so sad that I worked for a company that would even consider this. And I allowed myself to sit in that sadness. 3 meetings is probably over like 2.5 weeks. I let myself sit in that sadness too long. And then once I remembered like numbers don't lie and there's a different way to approach this, that made the difference. So I learned a lesson in that moment of, there's a couple ways to approach different things and the numbers don't lie. And if you don't feel good about something, just speak up sooner. So that, yeah.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I have so many questions that would acknowledge who and what that situation was. So I'm gonna type it.
But I'm guessing you could probably figure out like what like it can get dicey sometimes in that marketing space if you're not keeping an eye on
Not
them.
uncommon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Cool. Amani,
Same question for me.
poof, over to you.
Okay, we'll keep it professional and we'll talk about when the values weren't meeting my values. And I just keep coming back to when I was early in my career, and there was this one general manager of a place I was working at that would do two things. He would regularly he had a hot temper. So he'd regularly berate associates and have a hot temper. He was hot and cold, hot and cold. That was the first issue. I was like, I know I'm young, I know I'm learning, and I've accepted tough love before from my dad, but this seems a little bit kind of wonky. Then there was shady stuff going on with the money. And so when you add the two together, I was like, whoa, there's a lot going on. And then you're quiet because you don't want to cause anything. You're young, you don't get fired, but then you're like, hold on, this keeps happening. It could affect other people that I do respect that are here, kind of having to be at this person's beck and call. And so eventually you have to like speak up, say
Hmm.
something, take it up the chain, over his head, document things. It was so messy, and I left before it ended up hitting the fan anyways. But that's what comes to mind very quickly.
How has it impacted you now in how you behave differently? I know you're in a different scenario as an entrepreneur.
I just try to keep things, particularly when it comes to like controlling your temper, um, and don't mess with the money. I mean, to keep it simple, just keep the money, don't mess with the money, really controlling your temper, and just setting up some checks and balances so you can kind of make sure you keep yourself in check with the money. That's how it kind of affected me moving forward. That was interesting. I was quite young in my career.
Some of our greatest learning, I find, comes from the worst experiences with others that we say, I'm never going to do that.
Yes, personally and professionally. Yes.
Lyndal, like this has brought up, I just ran 4 scenarios in my head. Like it just, as I was like, oh, and then there's that one, and then there's that one. I don't think we're alone in this. I think we all have so many moments where our values have been tested and it does make us better or it makes us change things. What I appreciate you asking the timing of this question is I don't think we ask ourselves these questions enough, because how we untangled ourselves out of it is also kind of telling too. So do you see that where you're guiding somebody towards something and you see them untangle themselves? Like what happens during your coaching with the untangling when you're doing that with them?
I love the word untangling. I haven't used that, and I think I'm going to borrow it.
You got a lot of stuff. You got a lot of stuff from us today that you're going to use.
I did. This is so rich.
Look what we're getting from her. Look what we're getting from her.
I think the untangling, a lot of work that I do up front. So when I work with a client, we will front load what I call an onboarding session where we will spend 3 hours together. Part of that is looking at the feedback from others, but it's also doing a dive into, and I'm so tired of the word deep dive that, hey, we're just diving. It's not deep. It is deep, but diving into values and clarity around that, because moving forward, there has to be that clarity around the values if you're going to hold someone accountable to it. And so then that untangling becomes, hey, you said this was a value. I'm curious, how are you making sense of this situation? Or you're telling me that you're really, working to be calm and cool and collected, and yet you're also telling me a story of where you lost your marbles with someone and said some things that you feel like maybe you shouldn't have. And let's look at that. And that's where the self-reflection comes in. It's where the self-awareness comes in, that we have, and the humility, right? We have to be willing to go there and have that trusting relationship with our coach, with our client, that dynamic together, to be able to then say, okay, let's unpack that and examine it without the judgment, right? And a lot of times I think there's, I've had people say, well, I can get coaching from my best friend or my spouse or my partner. And
not the same.
It's not the same. There's generally a vested interest, right? And a perspective, and it doesn't become coaching, it becomes telling, right? Oh, Mandi, let me tell you, no, remember we did this, you've been here, I've done that, I saw it. And it's, if you do that, that's going to mess up our plans for this occasion event. But there's also, to judge is human, and judging is not always the evil thing that we make it out to be. Recognizing that it's how we keep ourselves safe. There's merit to judgment, but in that place of exploring a behavior and a misalignment, that's not where we need the judgment. It's where we need the ability to dig into that and say, well, how interesting, right? And Mandi, wow, you didn't say anything for 2.5 weeks, and it felt, you described that as painful, as sad.
It was so painful.
That's really hard. And so where are there ways to ensure that your behavior and your actions are aligned with your values, and yet you're also being respectful, you're gathering all of the information, that then it's digging into that. It's not coaching is not, very infrequently is it advice, right? Because there's not a one, go to ChatGPT if you want advice. Here's the situation. There is such a nuance. There is a humanity. There is a, the challenging of that exact situation, right? There's context that has to be present to then make that headway and have those realizations and those choices of how you want to behave in the next situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. we got to say a shout out to Carolyn Harris. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your chatting with us.
Hey,
Hi,
cool.
Carolyn.
Now, Lyndal, when you first started working for, let's go back to the day before your first day working for Four Seasons, early in your career, because I think that was one of your first management positions, correct?
Fairmont was actually my first.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the day before you started working for the Fairmont,
Yeah.
and we're going to visit with that Lyndal and give Lyndal of that era advice based on everything that you've learned so far. What advice would you give your younger self?
Whoa. It would be around the values, getting really clear on my values, and ensuring there were ways to align those. And they weren't challenged in any significant way in those first few months or years. So I'm not suggesting that, but I don't think I had that clarity around it. I think tapping into the growth mindset is part of that, but I think there's a piece of, if you're embracing the growth mindset, you're asking for help. You're creating. I by default, many years later, sort of curated my personal board of directors. Right, those mentors that I say, hey, Amani, I've got this situation. I need some input. I need some perspective. And Mandi, oh, there's this situation, and I wish I had that advice to do that
Mm,
sooner and more
yeah,
deliberately. Mhm.
great point. Yeah.
And then I think finding ways to be of service. I talked about the kind of scarcity versus abundance mentality. And I think, not to make it gender specific, I think though women even more so, there is oftentimes this competitive, if you get promoted, if you win, I won't mentality. And especially earlier in one's career when we're more junior in positions and in the corporate world. And I think that send the elevator down concept of, that's amazing that Mandi's getting recognition. How cool. She's my peer. That only elevates our whole department. Awesome. Great. She got the sale. So cool. That doesn't mean that it's taking away from me. And the reality, sometimes it does, right? So there's a very real aspect to that. But I would have advised myself to say, think about how to be of service, how to support differently, and recognize that, really embrace that abundance perspective, and ask for that support in return.
Well said. Mandi, take us home.
That's a great segue to ask you, how can we lift you up? How can we be of service to you as you continue to do all this amazing coaching that you're doing?
Well, thank you for asking. So follow me on LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
Connect with me. Amplify this podcast. This podcast you have talked about in several of your podcasts that I listen to regularly, about the learning, and that these are about learning, and it's about creating new information for people. And I've learned from every single podcast that you've done. I
Oh,
hope
thank
people
you.
might learn a little bit from this. And I would say, if to anyone listening, share, tag me, forward it, post, repost, to ensure that if this might be meaningful for someone to hear, that gets shared. And then, I am always open to connection, and discovery calls. And I think that, where there's an opportunity to learn, it's funny because oftentimes I get asked, what kind of type of client do I work with? Is it corporate? Is it startup? And it is literally everything. The common theme is around what we talked about previously, right? That it's the clients that are values driven, that are people centric organizations, that understand the power of talent in creating and delivering on business results, that are self-aware, that want to put that energy into development. And so I would say, if that sounds like you, or if you're questioning where there are opportunities to be more effective as a team, to build trust, to be more effective leader individually or collectively, then let's have a conversation. Let's chat. Reach out.
Sounds good.
Beautiful. It's great.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you giving us your time and wisdom, and even the live coaching session, so people can understand how your mind works. So we're appreciative. We're going to put you back in the green room really quickly and give you a round of applause here.
Cool.
Lyndall, thanks for being here. You are helping people more than you know. just by being here and sharing what you're sharing. So just thank you for your time today. This is beautiful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Okay, Mandy, we are done for this day. Another great interview. Who do we have to look forward to next week?
We have Janine Letford.
Oh, I was just with Janine
Yeah.
yesterday at the book launch event. She's here in Phoenix.
From
Also,
Lyrics and Leadership Institute, which
yeah.
this sounds amazing. I can't wait to meet her.
Yes, you're gonna vibe with her. You're gonna vibe really well with her. That's
Mhm.
cool. Okay, thanks to Lyndal again for giving her expertise and wisdom. If you're watching or listening, please make sure you subscribe on the platform you're watching or listening on. Please leave us a review, share it with a friend, and particularly if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to us, and then like and subscribe. Like, subscribe, and share. And with that,
Or Subsquare if you want.
there you go, subscribe. And with
Do
that,
it all. Do it all.
we will see everyone next week, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. on the West. And we thank everyone for listening and supporting.
Thank you for tuning in to Adventures in Business. Don't forget to rate and review our podcast on the platform that you're currently listening it on. And don't forget to share it with your friends and anybody that might be as much of the business nerds as Amani and I are. See you next time for another captivating interview.